our first question is about our youth, our young people. So how do we better engage the younger generation? Now, this person says the younger generation is 20 to 50, which I really appreciate, because I'm still part of the younger generation, according to the card. How do we want to engage the younger generation to connect with and care about Israel? I'm going to let Rabbi Jeopardy, who'd like to go first.
Josh? Rabbi Brown?
I would broaden the younger. I think we could go younger than 20.
I thought you were going to make it older, like 60 could be younger.
No. I mean, I think it's a great question, and maybe even I think it's one of the questions we should be deeply worried about in this moment, because we're seeing this, what we're seeing in the world and in the news in Israel. I think as much as it might challenge us, it's really going to weigh. It's going to sit on the shoulders of these next generations. So my answer would be, I think we have to be proximate. Is the term that I land on, meaning we have to be close to Israel. I know that may sound obvious, but it's in a world where we tend to, I think the catchphrase that's often used is cancel culture, which is when I don't like something, I'm just going to put it over there and I'm going to boycott it. I'm going to not talk about it. I'm going to not make it part of my life. We can be pretty well assured that the Israel that our kids are going to inherit is probably not going to feel like the Israel of the 60s and 70s that many of us, got to experience, where Israel was a beacon to the world in all sorts of ways, as especially a progressive leader in the world when America was in the Vietnam War and Israel was out there defending, fighting wars that made more sense to people. That's easier. So we have to help our kids not walk away, turn it into something that's going to be challenging and complicated and may not be pretty, because the result is when you get to know Israelis, which is why our shlichim are so important, when you go to Israel yourself, when you put a face to it, it changes your whole perspective. Because you have a personal connection. And I know for me, I've been trying to read the news as best. I've been trying to understand all this stuff going on because I'm not a judicial expert. And I've gotten far more from the people who live in Israel, my friends who have been visiting Israel in these last months, my friends and family who are over in Israel, from Rabi. I've learned more from the individual conversations that, thank God, I have, because I got to work at Jewish summer camp with a bunch of Israelis, or I lived in Israel for a year. I had that privilege. If our kids walk away from it because it's not all rosy, then down the road when things are tough, they're not going to have the resources to connect with it the way we need them to.
I'm going to say two words, and it has nothing to do with the age of whether children or adults or somebody who's 75 is the new 45. I know. The words are experiential learning. That's it. It's precisely what Rabbi Brown has just said, that having and being able to nurture relationships, being able to have individual contact, exposing oneself to something through learning experiences here, and making it a priority to go there. Making it a priority for parents and family members that feel that it's a priority ultimately makes it a priority for children. So that children, young adults, 40, 50, wherever you are in the spectrum, that by having individual interactions and personal experiences with people that you know, people that you will listen to, that will listen to you, so that you can gain insight and not just what you believe it is. That's how we look forward and nurture and plant the seeds for people to want to continue to have this engagement. It's through learning. It's through synagogue experiences. It's what we do in our various forms of Jewish education, be it in supplemental programs or in day schools. It is summer camps, huge ability to engage through this kind of informal educational experience. Every single one of those, experiential education, that is the way that we engage, and that's how we plant seeds for the future.
Just to add, you talk about experiential, and I think the word that comes to my mind when it comes to teaching our youth, and to me, really, it's about the adults, at any age. Really, it's also about the excitement and joyful experiences. I think bringing excitement and joy into the picture of whatever we do, however we create that experience, make that the feeling joyful and exciting. There's nothing more powerful. The foundation of a Jewish life is being joyful. And so when we want to create that joyful experience of Judaism, and Judaism and Israel are synonymous with each other. They're not two different things. And so we have to create that joyful experience for everyone. And when there's joyful experiences, when it's fun, when it's exciting, everyone wants to take part in it. If it feels boring, people don't want to think about it. If there's animosity, people don't want to have to do with it. If it feels, if there's anxiety involved, people don't want to have to do with it. Especially the youth, when we want to engage any age, especially the youth want something that's meaningful, experiential, but the underlying it all has to be joyful and exciting.
So I just want to, I know that I'm officially here as a moderator, but having worked with college students for the last 25 years, I just want to add that to Rabbi Brown's point, in this particular moment, first of all, birth rate, it has reduced its seats by, I think, 30% for fiscal 24, and it's expected to continue to decline. And most of that is a funding issue, I think you referenced. So just to understand where it's coming from. And I would say the birth rate is an amazing, it's being recorded, birth rate is an amazing, amazing opportunity. But for those of us who are not a part of the birth rate generation, if you are a committed family, you often spent much longer in Israel. And so one of the complicating factors is that few students arrive on campus having any Israel experience because they're waiting for birth rate. So as opposed to the 90s when all sorts of students had been in Israel for 6 weeks or had worked at summer camps or had visited their summer camp friends or their camp took them to Israel, the lack of Israel experience for first year students, which we don't really gain until later on in campus life. Now that might shift because students might be choosing to go differently. So it may be an opportunity that students choose to travel differently with birth rate. I would also say that a great deal of young people find themselves comfortable in progressive political spaces, and it can be difficult to be an Israel supporter currently in progressive Israel spaces, which is another reason students might pull back. But I often compare it, if you think about the things, for those of you who have children in the room, that you wanted your kids to learn. You knew they were going to learn it in school, but you wanted them to learn it from home. Sometimes I use driver's ed, right? You didn't just send your kid to driver's ed, you spent time with them in the car. Sex education, you don't just let health class, right? You have those conversations with your kids. We don't talk about Israel. Maybe the people in this room, if I asked you how many times you talk about Israel on the dinner table, this room, you would have your hands up likely, right? But the majority of Jewish families are not talking about Israel around the dinner table. Or if they are, it's because of what might be going on negatively in the news. But on a day-to-day basis, their homes aren't filled with Israeli art. They're not talking about Israel on the dinner table. And yet students arrive on campus and they're expected to be articulate about what's going on in Israel and to articulately have a connection to Israel. So I think if our students today are not having a deep personal experience, like Sam and I prioritize making sure our kids spend lots of time in Israel. We've been fortunate to do that. We could have a whole nother panel on the expensive nature of Jewish life, but taking a family of 5 to Israel is not an inexpensive endeavor. So we talk about having these personal connections, and it's definitely a budgetary priority for families that we don't see people making in the face of the other opportunities for Jewish life today. Josh, Rabbi Brown had one more comment.
I actually have one more comment. You're focusing on these opportunities to be in Israel. I want to reflect for a moment when I was serving in Los Angeles, and our children attended the Jacob Pressman Academy in Los Angeles, conservative Jewish day school. Davened every day, Hebrew was half the curriculum, spoke about Israel all the time. but nothing was more important than the 6th grade trip to Israel. And it was an exchange program where our students prepared to go, created relationships with individual students in a school, the Magen School in Tel Aviv, that ultimately this relationship culminated in our students going to Israel and spending a number of weeks there. And even more importantly, Israeli students coming to the United States and spending the same amount of time here. And for our students, it made all of their studies, all of their theoretical learning about being Jewish, it came alive in a completely different way. And for the Israelis, it actually turned into, oh, this is about not being Israeli, and of course we're Jewish, but this is about the choices that we make in order to affirm our Jewishness in a place where it's not a given. And that experiential exchange was so important. Birthright, but those seminal experiences, I can't say enough about those. And if Birthright is not going to be providing those, we as a community have to look at what our priorities are to make sure that we continue to offer those experiences to our children.